Zombies had their most recent time in the spotlight in America a few years ago, giving us some great media like Zombieland,
The first time I let a girl into my life and she tries to eat me.
and The Walking Dead, before it went on for too long. But right before it died out completely, the movie World War Z, starring Brad Pitt and based on a novel by Max Brooks, was released and became the highest grossing zombie movie of all time, earning over $540 million at the box office. One of the elements of the movie that really set it apart from the other zombie movies and drew people in was that the zombies didn't move like traditional zombies generally had up to that point. Zombies are slow, and their slowness is as much as stable as their deteriorating bodies and hunger for brains. One reviewer said that in World War Z, these aren't shuffling, lumbering zombies, but convulsing, flailing, ravenous freaks. Individually, they are shocking in their spastic unpredictability. En masse, they are a menacing swarm, working together in a frenzy to create fear. The movie utilized the zombies in a way a lot of people hadn't seen before, and one scene in particular in Jerusalem, in which the zombies instinctively use each other as a ladder to scramble over a giant wall that's supposedly a foolproof means of keeping them out, is especially spectacular. Another reviewer said that World War Z hits the blockbuster equivalent of a delicate balance, gargantuan spectacle with a human touch, with bits that unfold in South Korea, and also calls it yet another glorified B film with A-list talent, but this time you feel the A-listers gave it everything they had. With that said, and the knowledge that World War Z is planned to get a sequel, it makes Hollywood remaking Train to Busan even more transparently a lazy cash grab than it seems from the surface. Now, I'm not really opposed to American remakes of foreign films, or vice versa, or whatever.
Don't use that tone to me.
What tone?
That sarcastic, contemptuous tone that means you know everything because you're a man and I know nothing because I'm a woman.
You're not a woman.
Oh, you bastard.
There are a lot of people who don't enjoy having to watch films in another language and having to read the subtitles. I don't get it and I think it's silly, but that's not going to stop people from being uninterested in foreign films and unaware of them, especially since the average person is only aware of movies if their friends mention it or if they see it advertised, which foreign films generally aren't. So I do kind of get wanting to remake the film in another language to bring the story to more people, especially people who wouldn't have heard of it or bothered with it before. However, on the other hand, I also know that if a movie is good enough to be remade, it's generally not going to be remade well, oftentimes because the creators of the remake either don't understand or don't care why the original was so good, or at least performed so well in the first place. What really makes this decision even stranger is that Train to Busan is pretty much an answer to the American film World War Z,
Trains in the station,
which itself was largely inspired by the British film 28 Days Later and how the zombies moved. The story and setting changes in Train to Busan were done more so to ground the story firmly in Korea and to fit it along with the theme of the movie.
거기서 펀드 매니저요.
아, 펀드 매니저?
네.
개미할게, 개미할게. 다 남들 피 빨아먹고 사는 새끼.
윤상아, 너 애 앞에서 못한 소리가 없어 진짜.
괜찮아요. 다들 그렇게 다 생각하시니까.
And it's a better film. And I'm not just saying that because I'm biased towards Korean media because I love K-dramas. And in fact, I don't really watch Korean movies and have only ever actually liked two others, one of which also starred Gong Yoo, but we're not getting into that one because that's a whole other thing. This movie has better reviews, with a certified fresh Rotten Tomatoes score, and is highly respected for its quality. One reviewer said, "It is nothing if not creative, trapping its heroes on a speeding train with hordes of the undead for a claustrophobic and high-stakes ride. It's a zombie movie that, amidst the giddy bloodshed, allows room for philosophical questions about our fundamental responsibilities to one another. It may not be something we've never seen before, but it's something we can benefit from seeing again." And another wrote, "In the manner of the most enjoyable horror pictures, every time you think things can't get worse, they do." And another, Train to Busan is the most purely entertaining zombie film in some time, finding echoes of George Romero's and Danny Boyle's work, but delivering something unique for an era in which kindness to others seems more essential than ever. It's a nightmarish vision of the end of the world, and a provocation to ask ourselves what it is that really makes us human in the first place. But ultimately, Hollywood is Hollywood, and this adaptation is going to come whether we want it to or not.
This is Major. I'm on site.
Because it's been a good minute since the last big zombie movie, and depending on who's making the remake, now might be a good time to apply the themes of the movie to the American social and economic system. With income inequality what it is now, it's definitely a topic most people would feel personally connected to and like to see played out in their media. I mean, that's probably not going to happen, but it would be a really good idea.
Fantasy, reality, dreams, memories. It's all the same. Just noise.
That being said, there are a few elements of the original movie that need to be replicated or improved upon in order for this movie to do well, or at least not be an embarrassment to everyone involved in creating the original movie.
Like this, no, like this. We ahead of us, no, like this.
The first is also the most obvious, partly because of the type of movie this is, and also partly because I've already kind of talked about it here. The remake needs to be a claustrophobic and high-stakes ride, just like the original. One of the reviewers compared World War Z to an elevated B-movie with A-list actors who actually give it their all, and the same is true of Train to Busan. The story is very contained, with most of the movie taking place on the train, and if not in the train, then in a train station or hopping from one train to another. This significantly scales the movie down from something like World War Z, which hops from different countries around the world, or even from the first Resident Evil movie, which takes place in one structure, but a very large structure that still allows for a lot of movement and creative settings. Keeping the action largely on the train, with very little give, inherently raises the stakes because it's harder to get away from the danger, and the danger is always one unlocked door away. This constraint can be limiting on what can be done, but the original movie is very clever in how it makes use of this space, so the creators of the remake don't really have the excuse that the space was too small or there was only a limited amount they could do. If it's a remake, even if they can't think of anything else unique to do, they can just lift the sequences straight from the original. Fans of the Korean movie would be expecting at least some iconic scenes to make it through, and newcomers would be impressed because they wouldn't have seen it before. On top of the action and the tension, the cramped space is also used effectively in how it affects the people inside. The situation forces these people to group together for safety, and through this learn that they have to look out for each other, both because they can't get away from each other anyway, and also because they're stronger as a unit. We also see the flip side of this, of the dangers of a large group of people currently ruled by fear coming together.
친구지 뭔지 감염됐는지 안 됐는지도 모르는데 여기로 들여보내자고? 어?
And even more so, the dangers of a morally bankrupt person exploiting their fear to manipulate them into doing terrible things simply because those things benefit that person and only that person.
이 새끼 감염됐어! 이 새끼 감염됐어! 이 새끼 감염됐다고! 저 눈 감아! 저 눈 감아! 좀 있으면 저 괴물 새끼는 처음 변하는 거야! 너 가고 싶어? 이 새끼를 다 쫓아내야 돼! 빨리 가!
This movie does a really good job of capturing group and mob mentality, and doing it in a way that makes their actions easily understandable to the audience without necessarily making those people justified or sympathetic. Back to that comparison of the B-list movie with the A-list actors giving it their all, that's going to have to be true here as well. The director was clearly not very good at depicting characters, especially children.
아까 얘기했잖아. 아빠 시간 좀 나면 다음에.
아니요, 내일요. 맨날 다음이라고만 하고 또 거짓말이잖아요. 아빠 시간 안 뺏을게요. 혼자 갈 수 있어요.
I actually almost didn't watch this movie because the character introductions were so painfully, badly done. I did not think I could do it.
뭐 듣냐?
야, 그냥 딴 데 앉아라. 어?
아무것도 안 들으면서.
The saving grace on this front for the movie, though, was first of all that once the zombies start popping up, the director stops caring so much about characterization, at least outside of what might help make a great action sequence, or what helps highlight the theme of the movie.
아까 뭐 하는 사람인데?
증권사 펀드 매니저요.
개미할게. 다 남들 피 빨아먹고 사는 새끼.
And second of all, the acting. All of the performances in this movie were very strong, and this was clearly accomplished by getting highly experienced and talented actors in the movie, even with the kid, who previous to Train to Busan had appeared in 12 movies. Although I do feel the need to address the controversy surrounding Sohee's bad acting, and I put it in quotation marks because I never had a problem with her acting and was genuinely surprised to find out that other people did. When I actually tried to look into it, I realized it was mostly audience members complaining on articles and forums on websites generally dedicated to Korean media-related content. And then I saw just how vile some of the comments were, and I honestly have to side with the director on this one. In response to the controversy, director Yen Sang-ho commented that he felt a lot of the vitriol being thrown at Sohee had more to do with her previously being part of the music group Wonder Girls and less to do with her acting, which he didn't see any problem with. Some people claimed he was only saying that because of course he had to defend his actor in his movie, but there is a precedence for this type of backlash. It's pretty common for musical artists to try their hands at acting at some point in their career, and while there's generally some skepticism when they take on their first role, Americans are usually a bit more open-minded towards the idea and more willing to accept that someone can be great at both. When it comes to K-pop though, idol actors have a tougher time proving themselves since people just assume they only get their role because of their musical clout, and their performance being bad is a given. This prejudice is in existence because it isn't uncommon for companies to push their idols into roles they are not ready for because they see the acting potential in them instead of letting them first gain the experience they need in order to deliver solid performances later on.
내가 그만하라고 했지? 끼어들지 좀 마! 이게 감히 너 뭐야? 너 안 나? 너 뭐야?
The bigger problem here, though, is that this prejudice is especially bad for female idols, and why even idols who have repeatedly proven their skills in acting continue to be relentlessly berated for bad acting, and why every time a director or co-star tries to defend them, people cry foul and say that they have to because they're tied to the movie or TV show.
혜미야, 나 주인공이 아니었나 봐.
So, I stand by my statement that everyone in this movie does a fantastic job. Yeah.
답이 됐습니까?
Back to the list, it would probably help to have a little bit more characterization worked in, at least for the main characters so they feel less like a vehicle for a metaphor and more like actual people.
이거에서 펀드 매니저예요.
애미할게. 다 남들 피 빨아먹고 사는 새끼.
But at the same time, it's probably for the best that the rest of the characters don't get a lot of characterization, which is insane coming from me who lives off of that crap. But the point of the movie isn't necessarily to focus on the humanity, to showcase the people and what they're going through, and how the apocalypse affects them, so much as it is about the action sequences, zombies, and the metaphor.
애미할게. 다 남들 피 빨아먹고 사는 새끼.
There's a large cast that this movie follows, and we do need that human connection so we actually care about them, but we don't necessarily need to know all the sides of their personality and their backstories for this movie. That's largely why the acting is so important. We don't need the story to get us intimately acquainted with everyone, but if all the actors' performances were generic or flat, then we wouldn't care because there's nothing else for us to care about. That's why it's so important for the actors to really sell what little characterization for them they get, and to have that clearly influence their actions and reactions. And the remake should definitely keep the character roster they've got because all the parts are important, and there's a certain symmetry to there being 2 teenagers, 2 adults, 2 elders, 2 leeches, 2 children, and even the train conductor and the homeless man who, yes, I believe are foils for each other. That's honestly also kind of necessary to the message. But also because similarly to the action scenes, the original gives the remake an easy to do and, in this case, cheat for how to make the audience really care about your characters. You make them young, and you make them old. Adults are a bit harder to make sympathetic, but the movie accomplishes this with the most obvious cheat to get sympathy.
여긴 안에 2명 있어. 우리 서서 오래 걸리니까 저기 저쪽 화장실로 가. 얼른. 시간 좀 걸릴 것 같은데. 자기야, 어떻게 잘 되고 있어요? 알았어. 미안해. 미안. 편하게.
They make them a married couple where the wife is pregnant and the husband doting. These characteristics cut down on the amount of time it takes the movie to get the audience to care about what happens to the characters, down to it happening almost instantaneously, because we have an emotional response to seeing the young, the elderly, and the pregnant in mortal peril. And honestly, with this type of movie, it's better to keep time spent on characterization to a minimum because most people are going to be coming to see this movie for the action and the zombies. You need to have good characters to make this type of story work, yes, but they aren't themselves the point, rather a means to an end, both for the viewer who gets to watch these people they care about survive the zombie apocalypse and go through some action sequences, but also for the story creators who use them to really hammer in that metaphor.
다 남들 피 빨아먹고 사는 새끼.
Like this,
Now, most zombie movies, or at least most good zombie movies, have some sort of message in them, whether it's about consumerism, a warning to be careful when doing the science, or that you shouldn't sleep with your presumed dead husband's best friend a few weeks after the world ends because your husband might not be dead.
Boy, I don't think that's fair. I don't think that I deserve
Shut
that. I don't think
Don't. My husband is back. He is alive.
he's my best friend. How you think that I'm not happy about that?
How dare you? Why would you be? You are the one that told me that he died. You son of a bitch.
And as it may or may not be apparent at this point, Train to Busan definitely falls into this category with its message about how the upper crust of Korean society are basically leeches of that same society.
관련 종목 뽑아서 전부 던져.
전부 다요?
어.
그러면 좀 파장이 있을 텐데요. 시장 안정성이란 것도 있고 아무래도 개미들 입장에선 좀
김대리.
예.
너 개미 입장까지 생각하면서 일하냐? 전부 매도해 지금 바로.
Sucking everyone else dry instead of actually contributing, and forcing everyone else to fight tooth and nail just to survive. That these people will effectively kill other people just so they can survive, and that it ultimately doesn't matter how good or bad of a person you are, if you are a part of society or even try to live outside of it, if you are young or if you're old, because you will ultimately get dragged down by these soul-sucking corporate pieces of trash, either because of a mistake, a self-sacrifice, or someone else sacrificing or sabotaging you. There is no escape, not even for the people who literally caused the problem in the first place. The themes in this movie, and the way the movie goes about exploring them, are ultimately what I believe really elevate this movie from just being a really good zombie flick to a really good movie. The theme is kind of obvious and pretty much spelled out for you in the beginning.
이거에서 펀드 매니저요.
개미할게. 다 남들 피 빨아먹고 사는 새끼.
But how the movie plays out this theme and hammers it into the viewer by having the outbreak be the fault of the company Gong Yu works for, by mercilessly killing all these good and innocent people, and showing that even if you outright reject the system, you are not actually saving yourself or anyone else, all come together to make this a more thought-provoking movie than Animated Corpse Eats Human Brains. And all of this is necessary in order to have the heart of the movie, which is Gong Yu's character arc. This movie needed to follow a corporate leech so we could see him going from not caring at all about anyone else, not even his daughter, to realizing that it is important to look out for other people and be considerate for them.
왜 갔어 왜? 미친 새끼야. 다 들어올 수 있었잖아.
It is very important that this movie made both sides human and gave Gong Yu's character a redemption arc, because it's people on both sides of this losing battle, and the sooner we see that, the sooner we can fix the problems. But it was also necessary that Gong Yu's character died. It was important for him to start caring about other people and see just how devastating what he and his company allowed to happen truly was, to feel remorse for that, and to ultimately sacrifice himself for a better future. But it was also necessary for him to be punished for what he did. It is important for people to see the atrocity in what they've done and feel remorse for it, but it does not absolve them of their actions. They still need to take responsibility and face the consequences. And an extension on that is I also believe the ending scene needs to remain the same, where the pregnant woman and the child make it to safety and they're walking through the tunnel with the military debating whether they should go ahead and shoot the approaching figures or wait so they can be sure they'll be shooting at zombies and not living people. This scene works really well if you honestly don't know what's going to happen to the main characters, which I didn't. I actually was thinking they were going to be killed off as a way to further the metaphor, but that's not what happens. The soldiers wait until they hear the kids singing and actually let them in, and that's honestly the best note the movie could have left on. Not the despair of the destruction the current status quo will bring on everyone, but the hope that once everyone on both sides realizes we're all just people and we need to look out for each other, that we can make a better tomorrow. And I also think it's really important to keep the song the girl sings, Aloha Oi, the same. The song is widely known as the Song of Farewell, and thanks to Lilo and Stitch, is also associated with familial farewell.
Until we meet again.
It's a great song to end on, and rounds off the metaphor quite nicely. It's like the movie is saying let's say goodbye to the devastation of the past as we walk into the future together. As I finish up this admittedly short list, I realize I'm back to where I started from in thinking that this movie is not going to be adapted well. There are so many parts of this movie that contributed to it being as good as it was. And with Hollywood's need to put their own stamp on things, and its propensity to turn source material into literal garbage, there's just a lot working against the creative team for this remake. Do I think it's possible for them to create a good movie, or even a movie as good as Train to Busan? Yeah, Train to Busan is great, but it's not perfect. And like I alluded to earlier, the blueprint for a great movie is already laid out for the creators, so all they need to do is find a decent writer, a couple of great actors, and remember to stay somewhat faithful. It won't be easy. Anything of quality is hard to make, but it's doable. However, like I said, the likelihood of Hollywood following through on any of this is slim to none, and I'm just going to sit back, expect the worst, hope for the best, and continue watching the Korean version in the meantime.
자 흔들어봐